Canadian banks and investment firms have sunk billions into the Israeli economy, including the sale of weapons used in the genocide of over 40,000 people in Gaza. Scotiabank, for instance, is the largest shareholder of Israeli arms manufacturer Elbit.
That's a bit from a new video just posted on CUPE Ontario's YouTube channel this week. It talks about human rights abuses around the world and, as you heard, has a section on Israel-Palestine that blames Canadian banks as being complicit in the reported deaths of tens of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza. It's precisely this kind of anti-Israel material for which the Canadian Union of Public Employees Ontario wing has long been known to support. Nearly 20 years ago, CUPE Ontario adopted a BDS policy to boycott, divest, and sanction the Jewish state, even though the national head office of CUPE didn't agree. Carrie Silverberg has been a member of CUPE for nearly as long as that BDS motion, 17 years. She had to join when she started working for a government job in a school board in York Region, north of Toronto. As the Thornhill woman started becoming more active in her union and attending conventions and voting, she was shocked to discover they supported policies of social justice, but sided only with the Palestinians and ignored the oppression of Jews and ignored antisemitism. She didn't like it when they held events on Yom Kippur as well. Silverberg tried for years to get her union to change. But then, on October 8th, one day after the Hamas attack on Israel last fall, she realized she would have to go through the courts to force the issue. What triggered it? Some posts on social media that the president of CUPE Ontario, Fred Hahn, created. One said that he was, quote, thankful for the power of workers and the power of resistance around the globe because resistance is fruitful, and no matter what some might say, resistance brings progress, and for that I'm thankful, unquote. He also put a "From the River to the Sea, Palestine Will Be Free" post on his Instagram account.
And I thought, this is somebody that I've had sat in a room with, and he's celebrating the death of my people. He's celebrating the torture, the rape, the terrorism. And I was devastated because, I knew Fred's bias was definitely anti-Israel. I didn't realize quite how much hate he had for us until then.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Thursday, July 25th, 2024. Welcome to the CJN Daily, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News.
Is life really miserable for the Jews, or are we just glued to a 24-hour news cycle?
Should we be worried that so many young rabbis are coming out of seminary as anti-Zionists?
And what does Judaism say about polyamory?
If you want answers to these questions, we don't have any. But we do love asking them. Each week, tune into Bonjour Chai to hear debates and hot takes by me, Avi Feingold,
and me, Phoebe Maltz-Bovey,
as we sit down with pundits, rabbis, and scholars to talk about the most pressing issues facing Jews in Canada and around the world.
Listen and subscribe to Bonjour Chai at thecjn.ca/bonjour or wherever you get your podcasts.
Catherine Marshall, a high-profile Toronto labor lawyer with the firm of Howard Levitt, agreed to take on Silverberg's fight against Fred Hahn and CUPE for free, pro bono. And a month after October 7th, the complaint was filed at the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal on behalf of Silverberg and nearly 80 other CUPE members who added their names to her action. Now, while the case was triggered by what happened after October 7th, the complaint lists anti-Semitic incidents and policy votes by the union dating back at least 5 years. Silverberg is asking for a few things. $500,000 in damages for their anguish. They also want permission to opt out of being forced to pay membership fees to their union because these dues get spent on political action that is anti-Israel. Carrie Silverberg joins me now from her home to tell us what it's been like for her to take on her powerful union.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Before we get into the whole history and everything of how the complaint against your union started, can you just quickly go right to the latest information? Like, where are we at legally? What is happening?
I believe we're just waiting for the system to call our number, so to speak. It's a long wait and it's frustrating for a lot of us, but I know that that's the way Ontario works. So
the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal, there's a humongous backlog. This could take years.
Yes, but I'm in it for the long haul. I'm going to see this through to the end. I've put too much into it.
I was going to ask you how you became the representative plaintiff. Can you walk us through how you decided, or who asked you?
So unfortunately, very few Jewish members there are a lot that are members of CUPE, but very few of them choose to go on the executive, which then allows them to go to conventions and sort of really see what's going on. So I kind of fell into becoming a steward, and then I became an executive, and I went to a convention, and I knew it wasn't for me, but I knew I had to keep going because there was such an anti-Israel, anti-Semitic tone. Before I went to CUPE conventions, I would have told you that I do not public speak, but I had no choice because I was sitting there and nobody else was saying anything. And I couldn't sit by and let it keep going. So the very first time I went to the mic, all I said was there was a document around racism, and it listed every ism there is, except anti-Semitism. And all I said is, where's the anti-Semitism? And it needs to be added. And when I stepped off the platform where the mic is, I had 3 people walk up to me and say, thank you for saying that. So that continued to happen. At each convention, there would be at least 1 or 2 resolutions. It was always like half-truths, the sensationalized media story, the open-air prison and the wall that they built, but there was never any discussion about why the wall was there, what's been going on. And so I would always go to the mic, and I knew that I wasn't going to change anyone's mind to becoming pro-Israel, but I wanted to open their minds to understand that there are 2 sides to this story. It's not one-sided, as everyone in CUPE seems to think and still thinks. And this went on for years. And in the meantime, at some point, I went to a labor history course. Being on the executive, we did educational things. And this labor history course did not say a word about Jewish people in the labor movement. The second president of CUPE, Jeff Rose, I believe, was Jewish. So I set up a meeting at the CUPE head office in Richmond Hill. I convinced my president to come with me, my local president, and he sat quietly and said nothing. But that's okay. Maybe he's learning, I was hoping. Fred was there, and Fred brought somebody who was very anti-Israel with him. So he's setting the tone right from the beginning. But I went in there and I said, this course, where's the Jewish history part of the labor movement, because we had a lot to do with it. He acted as if he was shocked and disappointed and felt that it needed to be changed. That was, I think, about 8 years ago. It hasn't been changed to my knowledge. So I didn't know Fred well then. So I actually thought we were having a conversation and he was learning and we were, moving forward. And I guess I was naive. So at every single convention I've been to, there's been at least one reason that I've had to go to the ombudsperson, and it's always been something around anti-Semitism. And it never gets resolved. There's always an excuse, the chair didn't hear it, the chair didn't know. It was funny how they never heard the anti-Semitic comments, but they heard it if somebody said something negative about a Black person or about a gay person. That they always caught and stopped and said, we don't talk like that here.
So can you tell me how you decided to be lead plaintiff?
People in my local, the Jewish people, knew that I knew somewhat what goes on in the union. I had just stepped down from the executive in September because of anti-Semitism. So everybody called me. What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? So we started looking into it. There were articles in the paper everywhere. People were saying, you can stop paying union dues. And I actually reached out to a lawyer who told me which form to fill out with the labor board. And I pulled up the form and it's like, no, this doesn't apply to us. So I spoke to a couple different lawyers, and I was also speaking to somebody at CJA who I had been speaking to all along, but somehow, and I can't remember how we got paired up with Catherine. It was a really fast moving thing because we wanted to take CUPE by surprise. So it was quiet and word of mouth and posted on Jewish Facebook pages. This is what's going on. But it was very hard to find people. But because I was the one person that had been involved, it fell on me because I'm the one that has the history. I'm the one that knows how to do things. So that's how it became me. And I had no idea how big of a job it was going to be. But even if I did know, I still would have done it because it had to be done. Enough is enough. Those comments that Fred made after October 7th were, I was watching on the news what was going on, and somebody sent me his tweet, and I literally started to cry. So that was why I had to do something.
First of all, you said you found out you can't not pay union dues. You can't opt out. What would that mean to you if you could not have your union dues going to this cause?
Well, when you opt out, what my understanding was, it goes to a charity. Like, you still have to pay the dues, but it doesn't go to the union. So my thing is, and still is, I feel sick that my union dues, whether it's 5 cents or $500, whatever it is a year, is going to an organization that would like to see my people dead, that promotes terrorism, that is funding, sending money to UNRWA, that's doing all of these things that are counter everything I believe. So
why can't you opt out, though?
You can't.
Do you know how much money you are giving in union dues every year off your pay?
I want to say $500 to $700, but I'm not positive.
So you're still a member of CUPE in York Regional School Boards?
Yes, I am. And it is horrible. If there's something right now that I have an issue at work with, I can't even call my union. I'm still paying union dues, but they're mad at me. So I'm paying for a service that really, legitimately, I don't have, but we're stuck.
Being the public face of this legal challenge through the Human Rights Tribunal, what toll has it taken on you and at work?
So originally, when it first came out, I was afraid because I know that there are a lot of very radical people who are very pro-Fred, and it wouldn't be hard to find me. So once in a while, I have to work till 5 in my office. And on those days that I work till 5, nobody's around. So I asked the caretaker to walk me out to my car because I was afraid. And granted, nothing happened, thankfully. But I have to say, for the first 2 weeks after the story came out, every day as I backed out of my garage and I pushed the button for the door to come down, I was waiting for there to be a swastika on it. Thankfully, that didn't happen. And honestly, my mother lives at Baycrest, and there are not CUPE workers there. There are, I believe, they're OPSU, but they all sort of, I think we've seen what's going on with OPSU. So we have different last names. And before the story broke, I said, Mom, I know you're going to be proud that I'm doing this, but you have to be quiet about it, or you can quietly tell the other residents, but make sure the staff doesn't know I'm your daughter. I was afraid for her, for how she might be treated. And the people that work with her have been very nice, and like, I'm not bashing anyone there. Like, they have been supportive, but I was afraid for her safety in the beginning.
What did your mother say? Because you told her. What did she say?
Oh, she is so proud. And I have to tell you, when I told my half brother about this case, the next day I was at the office and he texted me and he said, Dad would be so proud, and so am I. And anytime there was awful things on social media that I wanted to respond to, but I'm not going to, I started writing letters to the IDF soldiers. That was a productive way to write. It's because it's not worth getting into the sandbox with him, because it's just going to bring out the haters. It's just going to, make things worse for me, because, they're saying all those negative things. And actually my partner, Sheldon, tells everybody, he's like, the CUPE case, it's her. And he calls me Esther.
He calls you Esther?
He literally calls me Esther.
That's amazing.
I actually wore an Esther shirt to work because nobody would get it. So they couldn't tell me it was political, which it's not. And because I can't wear an I Stand With Israel. I can't even wear the Bring Them Home shirts. I can't, because it'll be seen as political. I do.
There are people wearing keffiyehs to work.
Well, let's put it to you this way. If I get in trouble, which a couple of people have told me I likely would, I have no union representation. So it's not worth rocking any boats right now, because what's going to happen? So I do wear my hostage tags, and I won't take those off, but they're like a piece of jewelry, I guess. And people who, once they found out what the tags are, have stopped talking to me.
I was going to say, and now you're a little bit easier for you, a little bit more confident, not as fearful.
I think it's given me a lot more strength and confidence, but at the same time, it's still scary. And at this most recent convention, very scary. I was offered at the convention to go in a separate room so that I would feel safe. But I said, yes, I would like that, but I'm not doing it because then I lose my voice. And then they know that they can bully me and I'll go away. So I'm going to have to sit there and feel uncomfortable and feel unsafe. And I will do that because that's the right thing to do. And somebody's got to do it.
Did you speak on any of the resolutions? And any resolutions passed that you want to tell us about?
Well, the worst thing when I spoke was when Mark Hancock, who is our national president, gave his address. And of course, he spoke about a ceasefire. And I went up to the mic and I said, we all want this war to end. However, you made no mention of our hostages who have been held there in captivity and I pointed to the number on my shirt.
Right. Our listeners can't see, but you have a piece of masking tape, as a lot of people wear in Israel, with the dates. Every day they change it. Yeah.
Rachel Goldberg asked us to do it. And then I said, and you also made no mention of Hamas, the terrorist organization. At that point, my life at CUPE changed forever. The people behind me, I know that it wasn't all 1,200 of them, but a large portion of them started booing me, which is not allowed on a convention floor, and yelling, what about October 8th? What about October 9th? And I can't remember what number they got to I'm waiting. It was Fred Hahn's job. He was chairing the convention at that moment. That goes against the CUPE Constitution. It goes against the rules of a convention. He needed to stop that. He did not. So I turned around and I said, it's my turn at the mic. You need to stop. You are harassing me. And it went silent because the word harassing in the union is a big deal. However, they started booing at the Hamas part. I'm still having nightmares.
Okay, let's talk about why you decided the tribunal is the way to go. What do you want to come out of this? Because it may not happen for years, 2 years, 3 years.
Which is the frustrating part. But I don't want to go to civil. Like, it wasn't about winning a lot of money. It was about making change. So what would I like? I would like to see there be mandatory anti-Semitism training by a mainstream Jewish organization of our choice. I would like to see them not being allowed to take a political stance of something that is really outside the realm of Ontario. I would like to see us being able to donate our union dues to the Jewish charity of our choice for at least a period of time, because we've all been paying for all these years and it's going to something we don't believe in. So we'd like to at least be able to do that for a short time. I'd like to do it permanently, but whatever I'm allowed to do. The biggest thing is we want change in education. We want the Jewish members to be able to feel safe and represented. And we don't feel either. I can't speak for everybody, but I don't.
Let's say you win a victory in the tribunal. Then what happens?
What I'm hoping is it sets the precedent so that other unions see that it is possible for us to do something. We need to feel like we're standing up and fighting back. And this is the only way we can.
Mm-hmm. When we heard your lawyer speak, Catherine Marshall speak about this case, she said CUPE is fighting, and she used the word disgusting, but she said CUPE is fighting this with every resource that it has. Who's paying for you?
Catherine is doing it pro bono. So, because otherwise we would not be able to do it. But basically I'm paying for his defense because my union dues are paying it.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, it's been really enlightening hearing from you, and we'll be following it. Thank you so much for being on the CJN Daily, and good luck.
As we progress, I'm happy to come back and let you know that we're winning.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily. Although CUPE Ontario's president did issue an apology in late October for the bad timing of his resistance tweet, he denies he was glorifying Hamas, and he said what Hamas did was horrific. Fred Hahn now tells the CJN in a written statement that political disagreement is not discrimination, that the members voted for CUPE Ontario's policies, and that while they all wait for the outcome at the Human Rights Tribunal, CUPE Ontario will, quote, continue to add its voice to the growing chorus around the globe, demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and true justice and peace in the Middle East. The CJN Daily is produced by Zachary Judah Kaufman. Our executive producer is Michael Freeman, and our music is by Dov Beck-Levine. And we'll end with a bit of lawyer Catherine Marshall's recent speech to a group of Jewish lawyers fighting anti-Semitism, where she explains why the CUPE case is going to be long and tough. Thanks for listening.
And I've had so many people message me just saying, thank you for fighting. We felt that people weren't fighting for us. And for the members that joined the case, that took so much courage because, of course, they're exposing themselves to all these psychos, a CUPE, these crazy people, right? Like their names being passed around, but they still have to go to work. They're still in the union. They're being retaliated against. They know all this. Their jobs are on the line, but they're willing to put themselves out there because this is something they believe in. And Fred Hahn's insane. When I got his statement of defense to our human rights complaint, like I can't make this up. I just have to tell everybody. He argued in his defense that when he posted that disgusting tweet, he just woke up that morning and he hadn't looked at the news, and he just felt really emboldened to just tweet about solidarity world, and he was just referring to it globally. And unions, it's not easy to hold them accountable. There aren't a lot of mechanisms in law to hold a union accountable. So they're really used to just getting, to being able to go out there and say whatever they feel like and do the craziest stuff. And holding them accountable and actually pointing out the insane idiocy and disgusting anti-Semitism of their arguments is so important, and they're just not used to it. It's going to be a big battle. They're fighting hard. They're throwing out the most ridiculous arguments, and we're ready to go all the way. We will. If it takes years, we will take years, and we're going to fight and we're going to win.
Y'all remember that joke from Airplane? The old lady asked for some light reading.
How about this leaflet, famous Jewish sports legends?
But in actuality, that's changing. Jews are crushing it in sports around the world, and we are here to celebrate them.
Sandy Koufax gets his 10th strikeout.
Zach Hyman, his first career hat trick. 41 points for Diddy Avdija. It's Sue Bird's building.
I'm Gabe.
And I'm Jamie.
We love Jews and we love sports, but most of all, we love kvelling over Jews in sports.
Together we host Menschwarmers, the longest running Jewish sports podcast in the world. Listen and subscribe at thecjn.ca and wherever you find your podcasts.